Okay guys, welcome. Today I will show you how to set up the brake mix on the Sanwa, but most important on the Futaba, and I will show you the differences in between those two brands when you're racing large scale cars. So we'll start with the Sanwa. Here we have my old RS5 race car, which I restored last summer like new. I got it equipped with the Servos all around, and you can see one for the front brake, one for the rear brake, one for throttle servo, and only one single servo for steering. Everything is on high voltage LiPo, and I got the Sanwa M17 transmitter, their top of the line transmitter. Start with the first one, steering. No big deal with that, you know how that works. And then we get the throttle servo for the engine. Okay. And then we have these brake servos that only works when I'm braking. One for the front and one for the rear. You can see the old cable brakes, but the principle is the same still. So, and now I don't want these brakes to be on when I'm steering, like they are. And why is that? Because when you enter the corner, full brake steering, you will lock up the wheels. Okay, so setting up the Sanwa, I'll just show you basics. You go into the menu, and it will never work when I'm doing the film. I don't really like this touch screen. It's the wrong one. Now we're in. You go to system, setting, and then you have aux type. And that's basically what you can set up. Aux 1 brake mix, aux 2 brake mix. That is for you to have those servos only working when braking. Then next mix that is available is this one, where you can set steering to release the brakes. Then you see master steering and slave is A2, master steering and slave is A1. That's the only mixes we can use for this. Everyone else is not used. What this do is that when I'm using a steering command, you can see that the brakes are moving as well. I'm only using the steering right now. So every time I'm steering, I'm loosening the brakes by 25%. That's set up in this mixer. So when I put on full brake, I get 100%, and I'm starting to steer. You'll see that I'm losing both front and rear. And throttle is not moving. When I'm accelerating, you only have this servo. You can see also the front servo. I put a brake mix on that one, so it will release the front brake a little bit to make sure on these old cable brakes that they released when accelerating. And imagine how this should be working without the extra throttle servo, without the small silver one. Then every time I'm steering, when I have this function on, you will have throttle. Then if you only have 3 servos, you would have the throttle connected on this side instead. And then every time you're steering, you will have throttle. You can't come around that. It's impossible on the Sanwas. So this is why I used a separate throttle servo already from back in like late 2005. It's a bit vulnerable because you have a smaller servo, and you get one more servo. And I only got one steering servo, and still have 4 servos connected to my receiver. I still can use 2 steering servos on a Y cable, but that's pretty hard to set up, and you really have to have 2 super good equal servos with the end travel and the sub trim set, so they are exactly the same. Otherwise you will burn one servo. So don't go that route by using a Y cable. I don't recommend that. Like most of you will have in your large scale cars, we have steering servo, number 1, number 2, throttle and brake servo, although I only get one arm, but you should pretend this one have 2 arms. And auxiliary brake servo. I will start up my own Futaba and connect the receiver. I got both Sanwas as well. I can tell you that this cheap Sanwa MTS does basically what this does, except of the fast resolution. So it will be really interesting to test this one in a fast resolution on the track. But that's another point and another movie. So I will start by showing you this. You go for before we start, I'll show you. I got one, all servos are connected, but this is a throttle, brake, and one steering servo. But now I want 2 steering servos and 2 brake servos connected, and with my mix, how easy it is. So we go for the mix menu, and we start with steering mixing. We put that function on, and now we choose which servo do we want for a second steering. So we just check number 1 and number 4 is connected. So we just point on number 4. Now it's on. And we got 2 steering servos. And here you can set the individual ATV, you can say, left and right for each servo. And that's really important if they are in parallel, which they will be, working together. You have to set ATVs left and right individually to the exact same angle. Not disregard what amount it says on the transmitter, you have to check them so that they are turning exactly the same amount. And sub-trim as well, but that's basic knowledge, I think you know that one. Okay, so we got 1 throttle servo, braking, and now 2 steering servos set up. We go back, steering mixing, and we go for brake mixing. So now we have brake rate 100 on the normal servo connected to second channel, and we can choose if we want 2 brake servos, but I only use 1. Quarter scale racing, they probably have 2 for the fronts and also 1 for the back. And now the same thing, this secondary braking servo is connected on channel 3, so I just choose that one. And we have 2 braking servos. Only 1 going forward. You can see a small motion that's built into the mix, so it will release the brakes. Be sure to release the brakes even when you have a throttle on. So now 2 steering servos, 2 brake servos, and throttle. And as you can see, nothing happens when I'm steering with the throttle or brake servo. Then you go back and we can check program mixing. Okay, I'm back. I was too fast. I wanted to show you what I've done first. Because this function is not always the best to have on, and if you want to have different values to be able to check, you can see here I got race modes, number 1, number 2, number 3, or conditions. I just named mine rain, normal, rain, and condition 3 is unnamed yet. I put the button on my thumb so I can change it during racing. I still have these 2 buttons, I will show you. For the upper one is for a front brake ATV, and the lower one is for the rear brake. So then in the program mixing, you can see that my rate changes when I change the mode. Now it's 10%, and now it's 50%, and 0. So, steering, and I put on number 2. You can see when I'm starting to steer, that it will release both front and rear brake, and then I go for condition 3, nothing. But the best part is that when I release the throttle or the brake and start to steer, nothing happens. So the throttle stays intact. You will not have any positive throttle while turning, even though the brake function or the mix with the steering is on, as you can see. And this is really, really good. So you can achieve this everything the same way as I had on my old race car, but without that extra small servo. We can also do a check on the servo view on the screen of the transmitter. You can see both steering servos when I'm turning, both brake servos working when I'm braking, only one when I'm doing my throttle, and now full brake, steering, nothing happens with the brakes, with a flick of my thumb, releasing the brakes. It's easy as that. Flick my thumb again, nothing. And then with my up on the upper button, a release. It was the rear brake. I said the front brake prior, but it's the rear brake. You can see it get a lot less movement. And you can see that on the display as well. And I set those up with 1 point increments, so you can fine tune it while racing. Same thing with the front brake, with the lower button, and you will still have this brake effect. And also, when these race modes are on, when I'm changing the brake, the mode, you see the brakes increases. So it remembers the brake setting separate in every mode, also the dual rate. And dual rate I put on this button or knob, because I don't use to change that a lot on my race cars anymore. I did that 15 years ago, 20 years ago, but now I tend to have a lot of steering as possible and then drive the car. Maybe just a fine-tuned click if you need it. But the good part is you can change it with this button and the different conditions. You can have set up different values. For example, rain. We turn down the steering to like 85 and you will instant change. So if I'm steering, you can see how it changes really quick. That's all for today. I hope you enjoyed the video. First time I'm trying to do a video. I'm not looking that good on camera, I think, but at least maybe you learned something, and that's the main goal with doing a video instead of doing it in text. So maybe we'll do more videos. Until then, have a good night.